Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Centerville Grace podcast, where every single week we do our very best to help you, our church family, dive deeper into community to make sure that no one walks alone. Dusty, how's life in the big city this week?
Oh, if by the big city you mean Beaver Creek, where I live, it's so good. Out here in the township. We'll call it the township.
The township.
Great, man. We had a great 4th of July weekend, firework explosions everywhere.
Centerville is great for the 4th of July. And where I live in downtown Centerville, I can almost walk to everywhere. So it was like there were people at my house nonstop. It was good. It was good. I'm always glad when it's here. I'm always glad when it leaves.
That's right. That's right. I mean, people at my house is not how I like to live, but occasionally it's okay.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's right. And speaking of living places, this week, a lot of our next gen students are out there living their best life at camp. Have you been out there yet? I know you've got to go out there and you get to go out there and do some worship. How's that been going? What are you hearing?
Going out tonight for the first time. I'll be there tonight. I'll be there Thursday night, depending on when you're watching this podcast. So far it's been going well. They got everything set up. Heard some good things already about the kids just having a great time. Heard the speaking's been pretty good. I'll be there tonight and Thursday, and it's nice to get a little bit of a eyes on the ground, kind of look at what the kids do. And they have a great time there, seriously. Like when they do worship and stuff like that, they come together. I mean, it is hot. It is sweaty, 'cause it's like an outdoor, almost amphitheater kind of thing, outdoor stage with a shelter over it. But I mean, they go. It's super fun.
They go hard too. So I appreciate that.
That's right.
Let's see what this weekend we got a big thing coming up. Don't forget.
That's right.
I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Sunday night, we are going to be showing Moana 2. That is our community movie night. So make sure that you invite a friend. I think there's a post going out on Facebook today, a link that you can share with a graphic on it. So anybody is invited. We'll have the popcorn. We'll have the luau decorations. We're going to have Kona Ice, of course, giving us some lovely, sweet treats. And we've got a new screen setup for this one, too. So our screen will be way up in the air. We tested that out last night, and that's going to work great for us. I'm really excited about it.
Did you have to lift it up with a crane or something? How'd you get it up there?
Really tall ladders and a little bit of workers' comp.
Always just say, please don't find us. Are you just using eyelets and you're going to hang it from the ceiling? Is that essentially what you're doing?
Yeah. We've got that big curtain on the platform, and we kind of turn those S hooks around, and we can hang it from that and just get it all nice and stretched out. So that way it's up in the middle, and we can put the projector on the ground in front of it this time. Nice, clear picture. It's going to have great audio. It's just going to be a really good time. And I've never seen the movie, so I'm excited to watch it.
Oh, it's a really good movie, actually.
Yeah.
Super solid movie.
All right. So I hear.
Well, hey, this week in the life of the church, we also got to continue on in our summer in the Psalms. This week's Psalm was a really short Psalm, 121. Are you the kind of guy that memorizes Psalms like this?
Only if they're on music. Like they have to be put to a theme, to a melody for me to remember much of anything. And that's not just Psalms. That's just the case of memorization in general for me. I'm a bad memorizer.
So this whole song, Psalm 121, is all about, it's called a psalm of ascent, right? And it's how we look our eyes towards Jesus. When you think about your relationship with Jesus, are you the kind of guy that tends to look up at the Lord, or you tend to look down to kind of take control back? Where do you typically fall?
Do I have to give the honest answer or the Christian answer?
Whatever answer you want.
Yeah. The desire is always to look up. The way I and a lot of us are wired, when you ask me who has had control issues, I certainly do, like most people. So I will say there are often times in my life where I have to kind of get the taking control and looking down part beaten out of me a little bit in a great holy way by the Lord, to then realize, I should have looked up in the first place. But there's this gravitation we have, especially at least the way I was raised, especially in Western culture, but we were a very individualistic family as well.
Sure.
With high levels of responsibility, but with high levels of responsibility comes maturity, but then it also comes with it, the desire to try to control situations because you're trying to be responsible with them. It's like, hey, if this thing fails, it's on me. So I need to be responsible to see this thing through. So those are ways that kind of plays against what this psalm talks about, where it's really about looking up and trusting in the Lord.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest parts about trust for me is that, and looking up and surrendering and all that stuff, is just knowing that, I can trust in the Lord and bad things can still happen.
Yeah.
Like that. It's just, that feels counterintuitive. I don't know why my version of God sometimes is all sunshine and lollipops. How do you wrestle with that truth?
Yeah. So, honestly, it really comes down to the simple truth for me that the promise of God is not for us to avoid hardship. The promise of God is that his presence is there with us when we face inevitable hardship. So, when you're looking through the scope of especially the Old Testament, because the Old Testament really was about the hardship of God's people and how people turned away from God over and over again. And God had to, in a lot of ways, discipline them back from idolatry back into trusting in God. You read through Joshua, especially, man, is a book about trust. It's about, hey, we've got an army on the other side. There's no way we can accomplish this without the presence of God being with us. Are we going to trust in him, or are we going to try to do it our own way and get destroyed? And it's this lesson that they're learning over and over again as they're trying to take the promised land. And that's how it is a lot with God. It's like, man, we can put our trust in God. That doesn't mean the hardship's not going to come, but it means his presence is there with us. And, we aren't going to escape inevitable issues in life. We live in a sinful world where the stain of sin is present in everything that we do. So whether it's sickness, whether it's getting a diagnosis you don't expect, whether it's, seeing a tragedy happen like this week, we're still reading articles on this tragic flooding that's happened in Texas. And, when you see something like that happen and you think like, where is God within this? Why would God allow something like that to happen? It's going back to the reality that we live in a sinful, fallen world, and we will face those tragedies, but the presence of God is with us. And that's the promise that we can cling on to.
Yeah, I think holding on to the promises is one of those spiritual disciplines is like that I constantly need to be reminded of. We don't talk about it very much. Like scripture memorization is a part of the spiritual discipline of holding on to the practice of promises, but praying those promises is also part of the deal, right? And is there any promises that you pray for regularly?
Man, that's hard. I mean, not a specific one that I would pray with like, hey, this is the same promise that I pray every single day. But it's, for me, what my prayer is always is, God, help me recognize your presence in the midst of what I'm doing, in the midst of like, show me where you're moving, show me where I need to follow you, show me where I need to let go of my own way and lean into you. So it's more of an ask than a promise, I would say. It's more about my posture in that mode and how I respond to God than it is about clinging to what God's already said. Because I believe that, the promises of God are there and true. My issue is not that I need to remind myself of the promise. My issue is that I need to remind myself to not try to take over.
Wait, say that again. The issue is not about. Say that again. That was really good. I just think that's a bar, as my kids would say.
Okay. Yeah. Gosh, it's really hard for me to repeat the same thing twice. My ADHD.
The issue is not that.
It's not that I need to be reminded of God's promise. It's that I need to be reminded. I need to take myself out of it and be reminded that I need to follow God's promise.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things where when we talk about, there's a part of the psalm that I think is so beautiful where, and I mentioned it on Sunday, is this idea of the maker of heaven and earth. And so the vastness of God, reminds me of how insignificant I am. And that is what should give me comfort, right? Like, and so my insignificance is not a down, like, it's not like, it's not something to be ashamed of or scared of or any of that stuff. Instead, it's supposed to be this idea of like, my insignificance is a reminder of who God is and how I can keep my eyes fixed on him. And so, one of the things that I've gone to in the last couple of years is this idea that anything that's good in my life comes from God, and anything that is not good comes from me. Do you, what is that called? Total depravity. That idea of like, I'm just a terrible person, and there's no shame in it, right? Like,
right.
Does that make sense? Of like, how do you, what's your posture on that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So there's a tension I have to hold when it comes to that conversation. When we talk about, how minuscule we are, that like God's will is still going to be done regardless, right? We're not important enough to gravely mess things up, and we're not, and we're not small enough that God doesn't care about us. There's this piece that we recognize we are a speck of dust in the universe. But at the same time, there is a purpose that God has for us. So, while I can get on board with kind of the theological thought of total depravity, hey, we are inclined to sin. There is, we still have a sinful nature that operates somewhere within us where we pull away from God, even when we know who he is and we try to practice that in our lives. But there's also this beautiful piece where God has an amazing plan for us and we get to participate in the kingdom. So that's the tension, right? Is that, I don't have the power to mess things up to the scope that I think I can because God is still in control. But at the same time, God still has a plan for me and desires to use me. And anybody desires to use you in mighty ways for the kingdom if you will allow him. So it's holding that tension. Yeah, you're a speck of dust in the universe, but God also knows the amount of hairs on your head, and he cares for the sparrows in the middle of the field, if we go to other Psalms. And that's the beauty of both sides of God's nature.
I also love the way the Psalms, because most of them are written in the same vein. Some of them are even written by the same person. The Psalms kind of are interwoven together, right? Like in this particular Psalm of Ascent, we see who God is, the character of God. And then next week, we're going to go to Psalm 23, where we see how God cares for us out of his character. And I think there's some, I was talking to our guest preacher about this, who I'm not going to say who it is. You have to go to church to find out. The kind of the idea of like what that means and looks like, he that guest preacher was saying the Psalms feel like, he was like, man, I feel like what you just preached is a lot of what I'm going to preach. And I'm like, well, that's because the Psalms are connected, right? They're right. Interwoven. They're, God's character is consistent even when my character is not.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's where the beauty of reading through the entirety of Psalms, what it is, right? So all 150 Psalms, you've got all these moments, all these emotions categorized, but at the same time, they're all reminders of the same truth about who God is over and over again, just in a lot of different ways. So you can preach, a lot of the Psalms exactly the same way. They just use different artful language and how they get us to understand it, because the same metaphor that works for you and how you understand God might not be the one that really speaks to me and works for me. So I think, God gives us all of these compilations, all 150 Psalms, that the full picture tells us who God is.
So good. It's so good. One of the things I talked about at the end of the sermon was this idea about trust, right? If you don't trust God, it's definitely a you problem, not a God problem, right? And for some reason, I find incredible amounts of comfort in knowing that this is my fault, not God's fault.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if comfort would be the word I would use.
It's a deep look into my psyche. Yeah. There's no one to blame but me.
Yeah. I go a little more on the frustrated side of like, oh, dummy, why do you keep doing this? Like, know the right thing to do, and yet you still try to grab control of things that you don't need to grab control of. Ugh, that's the human condition.
The human condition for real. When you think about the trust muscle, right? We talked about how I at the end of the sermon, I gave 5 ideas on how to build the trust muscle. And certainly there's a lot more. There's a ton of spiritual practices that didn't get in there, but read about his character, spend time remembering and reflecting, start small, pray honestly, and do it together. Do it with people. Out of those 5 muscles, which one is the hardest for you to work on?
For me, and I'm just going to speak into my own personality right here. It's probably do it with people. Because I can live all day long in personal devotional time and me and God, and we're going to figure this thing out. Involving that in the sense of community that comes with it, is incredibly important. And that's always the muscle that I have to lean into because it's uncomfortable for me, but it's also the most spiritually formative for me because it's not my natural inclination.
For me, it's remembering. I have such a hard time remembering what God has done for me and just moving forward to the next thing because it was kind of future focused, right? And so this idea, I used the word in the sermon, Ebenezer, and it's funny. I just interviewed a guy on the podcast, on my Follow the Lead podcast, who had a baby, and he named his baby Eben, E-B-E-N, and it's short for Ebenezer.
That's how you mix something really old school and very modern at the same time.
He's so cool. He's a cool guy. His name is Zach Wendell. He wrote a book called The Bible Simplified, and it's not a commentary, but it's like a paraphrase. Like it's a collection. Like it's one of those things that's fixing that up. So like it's super fascinating that way.
That poor kid's going to have his name misspelled for the rest of his life, though.
I
So,
know.
like you said, Evan? No, Evan. All right. got it.
Evan with a B. Evan Antonio Windall.
Wow.
Yeah,
Heck of a name.
it's
Good
a
kid.
heck of a name. Anyway, so
Yeah, if you're a parent listening to this, cadence is important when it comes to first name, middle name, last name. Just saying.
yeah, for real, for real. All that to say, remembering is such a difficult thing for me because I'm so future focused, and it's always one of those parts of my rhythms that I don't do well. Like I have a lot of digital journals, but I don't always write how God answers the prayers in those journals.
Ooh,
And so I
yeah.
think that's a part of it. Like I just need to continue to lean into.
Well, and there's tension there too, right? Like I'd be curious how you balance out, not looking back, because the Bible does both, right? It says
Right.
there's times to remember, like, the Israelites are crossing the river. It's like, hey, put these stones up as a memorial to remember what I've done for you in the past. But then there's also other passages that say, hey, it's not about looking back. It's about looking forward because God has a plan and a desire to do something in the future. So how do you hold those tensions in place?
Not well. I mean, I think you kind of talked about it earlier in the podcast, this idea about the posture of my heart, right? Is like, am I looking back for longing or am I looking back to give glory to God? Right. So if I'm looking back for longing, then that's more of like control, desire. If I'm looking back to give credit to give glory to God, then that's more about like what God has done, what God can do, what God might do again, right? And then still surrendering that, right? Like you can't remember what was without surrendering that. Like that wasn't like I think we only want to remember the outcomes a lot of times. We don't remember the process to get there. So where I am in my life is not how I drew it up. I'm so thankful that God pulled it out this way, but it's not the way that I would have drew it up. And so I have to remember, not only was it, man, I'm so thankful that God showed up in me this way, but I have to remember that this was not the way I intended to get here. And so God's ways are so much better than my ways.
Yeah, I think that's really good, man. That'll preach. I think the way you said that, looking back, not for the purpose of longing, but for the purpose of glorifying God. Like if we could do that even in our churches, I think that would change our posture of what we do. Cause like, we've both been in the church world for a long time, and it's really easy
Yep.
to look back for either nostalgic purposes, right? Something that, hey, this is how I fell in love with Jesus. This is what was happening in my life. I want to relive that, which understandable. And also of like, hey, if we would only go back and do this thing that worked 30 years ago, God's going to show himself the same way again. And that's not always the case either, right? But it's out of this desire of like, we're trying to follow God. But if we can remember to always look back, not for the purpose of longing for what was, but as a reminder to say, this is what God can do, and he can and will do it again if we put our trust in him. I think that'll preach all day long.
Well, it's funny. A couple of years ago, I had a conversation with my dad when I moved. I was a lead pastor at a church, and we removed the pews. We had these old 1970 pews. It was definitely, there was a lot of discussion around it. But the pews just weren't super conducive to where the church was going. And I had a conversation with my dad about it. And he said something to the effect of, the hard part about letting go of the pew is that the pew is such a reminder for me of how far I've come in my faith, because so much of it was sat in the pew. Yeah. Right. And that's that idea. Like, I think this happens corporately more than we care to share, right? Like, we can't get rid of the organ because the organ is the instrument that I grew up on, right? Like, I can't get this or that. And so kind of figuring out that process is such a wild ride.
Yeah. I had to get rid of an organ one time at a church that it was not my decision. I just want to be real clear about that. But it was kind of decided by the elders and by the pastor. It's like, hey, we're not using this anymore. We haven't used it for 20 years. Nobody knows how to play it anymore. It had a plaque on the back of it, which made it even worse. Like, it actually had the dedication plaque dedicated by this family at this time. Probably at the time cost every bit of $70,000 or $80,000. Couldn't get rid of it for free because it's just not an instrument that people want anymore. Just all the emotions that come with that is so hard.
And so I think that this is where the psalmist does such a great job of giving us words for our worship, is that in those moments, the only thing we can do is be reminded that anything that we think that we've had a part in, he is the maker of heaven and earth. He is what was and what will be. He is all the different things, that the psalmist kind of promises us, right? Like he says, the Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. Like, it's like in all of that stress that we just talked about, those words can change everything. And that's what I love about the Psalms.
Yeah, that's so good, man. There's so much comfort there. I did smirk a little bit when you were preaching that on Sunday, as I'm sitting here looking at my very sunburnt skin, saying the sun will not harm you. Well, most of the time it will not, but I understand. Not everything's literal. We got it.
Not everything's literal. It's good. Okay. Closing thoughts. You got any?
Yeah, I think exactly the way you preached on Sunday, which is, looking up instead of looking down. Do we put our trust in God, or are we looking down and trying to control things? That will preach all day long, and we all need reminders to constantly be looking up and not looking down.
Yeah, amen. I'm really excited for the message this weekend coming up. I know our guest preachers put a lot of time and effort into it. A member of our church family, so it's so good, so good. So many gifts there for sure. So the best way to make sure you don't miss it. Follow us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Also follow back here on the podcast. We'll talk about it. Maybe we'll give a play-by-play breakdown of his preaching. No, we won't. I'm just kidding.
Only if we can get the little drawing thing. What do you call it?
The TV Illustrator. Yeah.
Yeah, the Telestrator. That's what it's called.
Telestrator. That's right. Yeah. Well, friends, that's it for us today. That's a perfect place to end this dialogue on. As always, if you need anything from us, we're embarrassingly easy to find. Dusty or Tony at centervillegrace.org. And hey, if you are enjoying this podcast, share it with a friend, maybe somebody who you know in the church family that hasn't quite got on board with listening to our Wednesday podcast that drops. We're thankful for you and can't wait to connect with you guys. Remember, no one walks alone.